Now calling this meeting of the CPS Energy Board of Trustees to order. Ms. Ramirez, do we have a quorum?
One trustee is absent, but all others are present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. We will move to our safety message, invocation, and pledge of allegiance led by Mr. Mike Hemmingson.
Thank you. I'll review the evacuation procedures so that we're all prepared to be safe in the event of an emergency. I'll review the evacuation procedures so that we are prepared to be safe in the event of an emergency. So if you hear the fire alarm, please follow the instructions that are announced through the PA system. If asked to evacuate, use the glass door to exit to the outside and verbally alert others. We'll move to the main parking lot in the front of the building or to the AT&T parking lot at the McCullough-Brooklyn Bridge. Our security team will be watching, and they will notify the appropriate emergency services. Lastly, we'll also have employees nearby who are trained to administer first aid if needed. Safety is a top priority here at CPS Energy, and while we hope this information is never needed, we want to ensure that we are prepared. Additionally, we ask that you remain seated during the meeting and keep aisles clear and do not block any of the exits. Will you please stand with me for the invocation? We thank you for the many blessings that you have freely given to us each week. We ask for your presence to guide this meeting of CPS Energy Board of Trustees. Provide them with the knowledge, compassion, and wise counsel needed as they discuss the business matters on the agenda today. Help us all to remember that we are stewards acting on behalf of our customers, and provide us with the grace to serve all people well. We ask this in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Hemmingson. We will now move to public comment.
Public comment provides an opportunity for members of the public to share thoughts on posted agenda items for this meeting. We will invite pre-registered speakers to speak. They may only address the board on CPS Energy-related business listed on the posted agenda. Speakers should state their first and last name, the organization or group they represent, and the agenda item they will speak about. We ask that you remain seated until you hear your name called. Additionally, if you have items you would like to share with the Board of Trustees, please provide those to Board Relations, and we will happily share them with the board post-meeting on your behalf. For this meeting, we have 2 in-person speakers. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak. At the conclusion of the 2 minutes, the screen will flash red and you will be asked to stop speaking immediately. Please be respectful of this time allocation. Thomas, will you please cue the timer? Our first speaker is Henrietta LaGrange, followed by Dee Dee Balmaris.
Thank you. My name is Henrietta LaGrange. I belong to the Mulberry Street Girl Gang, LULAC, Raza Unida, and Growing Up Brown. And believe me, a month ago, you wouldn't want to be me. And this is part of the message for all CPS employees. Take care of your health. And it was not me. I just had 2 sons with their male problem that it wasn't easy for me to accept, but I went through it. And the thing is, take care of your health. If your doctor tells you that you're deficient in some vitamin, please take it. Or there are people that you can talk to. Rudy, take care of yourself. We love you here, and you're the hope and the light of this old city of San Antonio. And I feel like anyone I may not be an expert, but I'm smart enough to be dangerous, and I know exactly what it is. And maybe you should have a shield here if you think you're in threat of anybody, but the threat is not here. It's probably outside. So just be careful, because I want you all here. Janie, Francine, all of you. You are a big part of San Antonio. You have made this CPS work, and we want it to work a lot better. And all my CPS fellow employees, I love you all. Please take care of your health, and you need to talk to somebody, talk to your doctor. Tell him to make time, or you know what? Type it out before he sees you and tell him, read what I'm telling you, because then you don't want to waste time him asking you questions. He already knows your questions, and all you want is answers. I love you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LaGrange.
Our next speaker is Dee Dee Balmares.
Good afternoon. I'm Dee Dee Belmontes with Public Citizen. I'm speaking on agenda item number 11. It's encouraging to see that CPS Energy's blended approach to the generation plan will include more renewable energy resources. However, there's a critical missing piece in the Gen Plan update, and that's the inclusion of demand-side resources. The plan has to include strategies to reduce or shift power usage, especially during peak demand. The STEP program, with its energy efficiency offerings and demand response, help manage grid reliability, reduce emissions, and lower costs compared to building or purchasing more polluting fossil fuel plants. This needs to be considered as CPS Energy goes into year 4 of the STEP program and planning for the next iteration of it. I'll ask again, as I have in previous board meetings, when will the community solar program, approved almost 4 years ago, finally be completed and offered to customers? Today's presentation includes a section on impact of growth and higher costs with a snapshot of residential customers and their demand by 2050. It's beneficial for y'all to have more near-term projections than 2050 because we really don't know what demand will be like that far out. Either way, where is the snapshot of commercial customers? According to the March board presentation, commercial customers will have a higher forecasted demand than residential customers. Board presentation should include for commercial customers their demand projections, the price per kilowatt for new build costs, what significant market energy purchases will be necessary, and what is their increased price risk and ongoing rate support. I ask this because according to the report, Retail Electrical Price Trends from Lawrence, Berkeley Lab, and the Brattle Group, residential customers have faced larger recent retail electricity price increases than have commercial and industrial customers. Residential prices are higher and have risen faster than commercial and industrial customers. These details are important for transparency ahead of any rate increase request. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Belmares.
That was our final speaker.
All right, thank you. We're going to change up our normal order a little bit today, and we are going to start with CEO remarks, and then I will have brief remarks, and then we'll have CEO recognition.
Good afternoon. The last week has been a really difficult week for our community, and I want to start off today by sending out my prayers and best wishes to the Noel and Ochoa families who were injured in our gas incident last week. Our thoughts continue to also be with the impacted residents in the Preston Hollow subdivision, and our focus remains solely on supporting them. I want to thank our gas operations team and our crew, our customer response unit teams, corporate communications, and all of our support staff who have been responsive in tending to the needs of the neighborhood. I also want to take some time to thank our District 10 Councilman Mark White, who has been in constant communication with us about the needs of his constituents. The mayor, Mayor Jones, who has also spent a lot of time with the residents of that neighborhood, and of course the board for the questions that they've asked and for them leaning into our response. Thank you all for the support. On Wednesday, with the exception of the damaged homes, the authorities involved cleared Preston Hollow as safe, and most residents were able to return home the following day after the incident, save for about 6 homes who were in the immediate area of the incident. The safety of our community and our crews is our priority as we continue to conduct this work, and we appreciate their understanding and just the understanding of the neighbors in general. The CPS Energy Customer Response Unit team has been operating from the Northeast Service Center, Senior Center, answering questions about the home's natural gas service. We've been arranging today. The debris cleanup should start in the area. Since Tuesday, CPS Energy has assisted more than 24 customers and actually taken over 251 customer engagements for all kinds of questions, along with 14 customers who needed lodging. We're going to continue to be here for our community, encourage them to call us at 210-353-2222 if they need additional assistance. As a reminder, if anyone thinks that they smell gas at any point in time, we ask you to leave the house or your business or wherever you're at immediately. Call CPS Energy at 210-353-4357 or call 911 to make sure that that we get out there and we make the area safe. In this particular instance, the National Transportation Safety Board is involved and is leading the investigation. And even these comments that we make today have to be approved as part of that investigation process. So we are doing everything we can to be cooperative with the NTSB as part of this process. Updates on this investigation will come from the NTSB. We are trying to update the community with information that we're allowed to update as there are changes in circumstances. So we will continue to update the community as we can and are able. But all of those communications are approved through our federal regulator, in this case, who's leading the investigation. So in closing on this event, I just, all the things that our community is feeling about this event, trust me, CPS Energy is feeling too. And we're going to do everything we can to support our customers to ensure that we've got, that our gas system remains safe, for our customers as well. And that, that we do what we need to do to see this investigation process through. So anybody who has, questions about, from a gas safety standpoint, I encourage you to call the number that I provided, and just know that we're going to continue doing our jobs. And I thank our employees for leaning in to this response and trying to do the right thing as we go. So with that, Chair Olmedo, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Rudy. Of course, I want to echo Rudy's sentiments about our customers in Preston Hollow. You are all in our thoughts. This board has seen how CPS Energy has responded, and we thank them for handling the situation with empathy and care. Rudy and his team have kept us updated ever since this event occurred and are keeping us updated on their work to help customers. And I thank the team on behalf of the board for their work to keep our community safe. And back to you, Rudy, for the recognition.
Thank you, Chair. So today I want to take some time to recognize a group of employees and teams that have helped to provide educational information out at the San Antonio Rodeo this past season. These teams included employees from community engagement, security, corporate communications, gas operations, and safety, along with dozens of volunteers. I went out there a couple of times this rodeo, and it's great to see the kids really engaged, listening to our safety presentations out there. They participated for 18 days, interacted with over 21,000 community members, 36 school districts, and over 7,000 students. The team offered valuable education to students, teachers, and customers through safety demonstrations and presentations. This effort strengthened trust, expanded our reach, and reinforced CPS Energy as a community-focused utility. This work is what CPS Energy is all about, giving back to our community. So please join me in thanking them for their hard work and commitment to educating the community. It looked like it was a lot of fun, and y'all did a great job in connecting out there. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We all appreciate your work and your cool white shirts. All right, pictures.
Or y'all come more down. Yeah, we have room over here.
So finally, Madam Chair, just to recap the agenda for today, we've got a consent agenda that includes a number of items. The committee governance documents, which we've been working on for over a year, has taken all the feedback we've gotten into account that's been given to us from the various committees. And so hopeful we'll get that done today. And then we've got a number of procurement items that you all have been briefed on that are on the agenda, on the consent agenda as well. We've got 2 nominations to approve today for the Community Input Committee. And I appreciate all the community members that are always so willing to, to serve on our CIC. It's a great committee. And then we'll talk about our year-end performance recap with Elena and Corey. We've got to approve our audited financials today, and I appreciate everybody who's been involved in that process. And then we'll have another conversation on our agenda plan refresh. So pretty straightforward agenda today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That brings us to our consent agenda. Do any board members have any consent agenda items they would like to pull?
I move to approve consent agenda A, B, C, D, E.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second for approval of the entire consent agenda. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Dr. Gonzalez? Okay.
I mean, I'm not going to approve them, but there is a typo.
Oh, there is, but that's in the,
I just want to make sure I'll review these correctly. All right.
Trustee Gonzalez?
Yes.
Chair?
Corrections with typos.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Vice Chair Dr. Mackey?
Yes.
Chair?
yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Okay, on to our regular agenda. Item 7 is board committee reports. We have the report from the Technology and Resilience Committee, and then we have the Community Input Committee reports. These items are for discussion. They are in your packet. Is there any discussion on these items? All right. All right, we are moving to item 8, which is CIC candidate approval. And hello, Ms. Garcia. I also want to recognize Chair Steve Bonnet, I believe, is in the audience. Hello.
And we'd also have Bob Zapata with us, too.
Do I always miss Bob? Hello, Bob. Thank you for coming today.
Let's see. Well, good afternoon. I am here before you today to present 2 nominees for appointment to the Community Input Committee, or the CIC. In doing so, I'll provide a brief overview of the CIC, highlight each of the nominees, and request the board's approval of these recommended candidates. As a reminder for those watching this meeting, the CIC's purpose is to represent and communicate the views of the community and to provide input on key utility initiatives to the board and to management. The committee is comprised of 19 members, 1 from each of the 10 city council districts, 4 from each of our board of trustee quadrants, and 5 at-large members. All committee nominations are subject to board approval. CIC members may serve up to 3 two-year terms for a total of 6 years. And today we are bringing forward 2 nominees from City Council Districts 1 and 4. Councilmember Kaur is bringing forward Martin Gutierrez. Martin is Vice President of Government Affairs and Advocacy at the San Antonio Board of Realtors. He is well known in our community based on previous roles he has held, such as with the Greater and the Hispanic Chambers of Commerce. He was also recently selected as a 2026 San Antonio Business Journal 40 Under 40 recipient. Council Munguia, District 4, is bringing forward Melinda Lechuga. Melinda is the president of the Lackland Terrace Neighborhood Association and a retiree of Citibank Client Services. Both candidates are currently serving on SAW's Community Experience Committee as well. Unfortunately, we like to have our candidates here at this time, but they were unable to be here today for various reasons, so we'll go ahead and just move forward to seeking your approval of these candidates.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Garcia? And do we have a motion?
Motion.
Is that for both or one? For both. Okay, so there is a motion to approve both of these candidates. Do we have a second? I'll second the motion. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Dr. Gonzalez? Yes. Trustee Gonzalez?
Yes.
Vice Chair Mackey? Chair?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Congratulations to Martin and Melinda. We hope to see you soon. This brings us to item 9, which is our year-end performance recap with Ms. Ball and Mr. Kuczynski.
Good afternoon. The first part of our presentation is intended to do a year-end recap of our enterprise scorecard, which includes the major groups of work that we accomplished during the year, as well as our performance measures and our year-end summary of those performance measures. So as you may recall, this is the fiscal year 2026 enterprise scorecard, which concluded on January 31st of this year. In summary, all of our strategic initiatives are either completed or on track. I will highlight some of the key bodies of work that we completed during the year. We did complete Wave 2, which is transitioning the newly acquired plants into our portfolio. We've continued to achieve our commercial operational dates for new solar and storage resources and have several planned for this upcoming year. Additionally, we continue to make good progress on our operational technology initiatives. And while we had one milestone inside of our OT metrics, our OT milestones around our SCADA upgrade slipped by 1 month, the overall program is on track. From an ERP perspective, we've completed our global design and are continuing to work on change management efforts and communication strategies around the significant digital transformation that the organization is undergoing. From a customer experience perspective, we have onboarded a consultant to help with our customer experience roadmap and the segmentation and efforts to continue to drive positive trends in customer satisfaction. From a metrics perspective, and I'll get into more detail in a minute, we have 8 enterprise measures, and we achieved 4 of those 8 enterprise measures, with the other 4 being narrowly close, with the exception of plant availability, to their performance targets. Some year-end highlights. With regard to reliability, While we continue to work on our customer outage duration, we did modernize our supervisory control and data acquisition, or SCADA system, which was a significant effort replacing a legacy system. From a plant availability perspective, we did acquire an additional 1,632 megawatts of natural gas generation, which continued to help with covering our retail obligations as well as beneficial wholesale sales. And Corey will go into more details in a moment on that matter. We did add over 500 megawatts of battery, wind, and solar capacity this past year. And we continued to reduce operational stress of our existing plants due to the additional plants that we have acquired that are continuing to show benefit for our retail customers. Gas safety, in addition to meeting and exceeding our goal around leaks, we did earn a system operational achievement recognition from APGA. On the fiscal resiliency front, we remained within our 3-point range at 3.13, which exceeded the target of 3.0, showing that we're continuing to focus on fiscal strength and stability, which it included. Which it did not include the East Texas power acquisition. However, as we continue to set targets, we are including all of the leverage associated with our acquisitions and the overall goal of improving our generation plan. Customer perception, we saw a significant increase to 716. We had a goal of 699 from an ECR perspective, and we continue to expand equity-focused programs and outreach. While our Gallup scores came in at 4.12 against a 4.15 goal, we are still in top quartile, which is actually measured against all of the companies in Gallup globally, which indicates we're continuing to strengthen our workforce culture. From a safety performance perspective, we're really glad to see improvements in preventable motor vehicle accidents from last year. We saw a 31% decrease, and we did see a 50% decrease in collisions on our own company property. From local investments, we improved over our goal of 70% and ended the year at 72.08%, which was above the goal of local community spend. From a measure perspective, this is how we ended the year from a measures perspective. On SAIDI, which is our average customer outage duration, we did come in higher than planned. I will note a couple of items. We had more storms than we forecast. We plan on a weather normalized basis, but had a significant number of storms. And they were storms that didn't cause a significant amount of outages all at once, which typically are excluded from the calculation. So we did have higher contribution of storms to our SAIDI. Additionally, as you may recall, we've made conscious decisions to implement planned outages for our customers. So we're actually isolating our customers and turning off power when our employees need to work a job even more safely than we have traditionally approached, working hot work. So that's added a few minutes to our SAIDI value, and we've planned that in this upcoming year's target. But it is our intent to continue to refine our work practices and, where appropriate, stop work and de-energize work if it makes the work safer for our employees and for our customers. Plant availability, we did have a tough year from a plant availability perspective. However, with our acquisitions, we recovered quite a bit of the sales that we expected from plant availability. So we did have a favorable financial performance, even though we had lower than expected plant availability. Breaking down plant availability, look, it comes down to we have old plants. You're going to hear in a moment continued discussion about our generation plan refresh. We had a number of outages at our Summers plants. These are the next sets of plants that are expected to potentially retire. We had low pressure turbine blade issues on one of the units and high pressure steam cracking on the other. Both represent safety concerns and reliability concerns. So we did take outages across the summer for those. And then we did have some other outages, but those were the majority of the drivers for plant availability. Reminder, these plants are 60s vintage units. I will also touch on safety performance in general. We measure something called recordable injury rates. These are basically injuries that occur that are greater than a first aid. And so we ended the year higher than our plan. However, we about mid-year, we're getting close to a 2.0 value. And so through targeted mitigation plans, including onboarding and focusing on stretching and reducing our musculoskeletal injuries, we were able to bring that performance closer to target, ending at right around 1.5. And so the next slides really go into more details relative to the measures that we are mitigating. And just to be clear, we are striving to improve all of the measures. So just because a measure the performance is lower than our target, we are striving to improve all of our measures. But I touched on some of the work around customer outage duration. We continue to tree trim and clear our lines at a higher than historical clip. We finished the year just below 1,200 miles of tree trimming. We also, due to kind of the higher number of storms and looking at our equipment failures, which were largely due to lightning, we are focusing on lightning arresters and hardening our system. A big part of this is eyes and ears in the field. So when we have customer outages, we really rely on our field crews to enter codes to let us know what, in their best estimate, the cause of the outages were. And so we still have a lot of outages that are unknown. And so we're enhancing our codes and enhancing education so that we get better intelligence and can make even better targeted investments on our system. I touched on plant availability already. I will also highlight, we did have some outages on the spruce units tied to some boiler issues. The operations team has gotten extremely focused on root causes around the issues in the boiler, which include, improved instrumentation, being able to better detect high temperatures, but get better control. And then there's a robust set of investment just to replace boiler tubes. And so we've got that work ongoing in our outage season. But all of those are intended to really drive out known causes of plant unavailability and better position the units for our peak periods. I'll just touch on Gallup and living mission and values. I mentioned we finished the year at 4.12 against a 4.15, but still being in top quartile as an organization, which is a significant accomplishment. But we are looking at working with Gallup to identify areas that we can have higher levels of engagement, focusing our efforts on, executive level engagement, and making sure that we're identifying areas in the organization where engagement scores are dipping, or where we have, opportunities to improve, our engagement with our team members, and focusing training, education, and action plans in those areas. Touched on safety performance. One thing I was remiss, and I think it's important to note, over the next couple of years, we are going to add, and we are focusing on integrating a severity measure, not only frequency of what I would call, anything any OSHA recordable is important, right? So don't take the comment that an injury isn't important. They all are, and we study them all and work to educate and engineer out risks in the workplace. But we also want to reinforce and focus on highly severe potential and actual injuries. So we're starting to identify, we call it sticky, but it's stuff that can kill you, or as you think about this, think about either potential conditions or actual conditions that have a high degree of energy in them. So think about, obviously driving is one, lifts that have potential for, dropping heavy equipment. There's also chemical processes that have a high degree of potential energy. So over the next 2 years, you're going to see this measure being reported out, and we're going to continue to evolve it. But what we're really trying to do is de-risk the work environment, bring out and engineer and design out the energy that can have serious implications not only for our employees but for the customers and community. We're in a multi-year program around safety culture. So we have several of our areas, mostly in the operations area, but some in customer, and we're now expanding to some of the administrative areas, but really working to build a culture of awareness around safety and building a culture where there's psychological safety to raise concerns and address problems, not only with design of our processes and our work, but also in how we address safety concerns in the workplace. And so that concludes my section of the presentation. I'll turn it over to Corey.
All right, good afternoon. We'll go ahead and get started here. So I'll take you to this slide, and again, before we kind of get into the numbers, just wanted to start with kind of a few of the positives from a financial perspective that we saw this year. Maybe the top 3 or 4 are probably the most impactful that were executed. Elena mentioned the acquisition of these Texas peaking plants. We've talked at length about that, but that was, again, an incredible positive for this organization. In terms of wholesale revenue, to Elena's point, even though there were some plant performances, we still delivered over $300 million of wholesale revenue. Again, these are dollars that come from the state of Texas, that come into our community, that help defray our local expenses. So that's a good news story for us. As Rudy mentioned, we'll be hearing from our auditors today about their unmodified opinion on our financial statements. So again, kudos to the team who worked on that, and we'll look forward to hearing from them later. Another big one that's really topical relative to kind of the large loads and demand that we're talking about in several of these meetings is the implementation of study fees for these large demand load customers to help recover those costs just of evaluation, which is really, really positive. And you've heard me talk about the prepaid transactions in previous meetings, but the 2 that we executed in last year had a total customer savings of $60 million. So those are really good news stories for this year. You may recall the format of this slide. I've used this in year-end presentations in the past to just kind of show where the money in our budget has been invested. And the categories probably look familiar because we've been using these for the last 4 or so years in terms of when we've had rate increases, where do we invest those funds? This is really a list that reflects kind of the ongoing additional investment that we have seen in our community. So a lot of the things look familiar, especially at the top of the page there. You've heard us talk about those pieces of equipment before, the miles of vegetation management that Elena just talked about. 1,500 miles, I believe, is the most we've done in a year, at least in recent history, and we stayed on budget. So that's a good guy, for the community. And then again, I won't read all of these things to the board, but they're there for our reference and consistent with the areas of investment we've spoken about. You may recall this slide as well. I like to do this at year end, at least for those listening who may not listen very often, really to describe how we think about and how you should think about our financial statements. And it's really relative to this flow of funds. I'll show some numbers on the next page, but this kind of conceptually illustrates how we, as prescribed by our bond ordinance, how we apply the revenue that comes in the door at CPS Energy. And it has to go in that sequence. It first gets applied to our operating expenses, so our daily run the business expenses. Included in that is fuel expenses. And then secondly, it must go to pay off our principal and interest payments on our long-term debt. That's what debt service is. And then thirdly, 6% of our total revenue must be put into what we call our repair and replacement account. That's basically a cash account that we use to help fund our capital plan that you've heard me talk about in our budget presentations. And then fourthly, city payment gets paid out of our revenues. And then lastly, if there's any dollars remaining, those remaining dollars will go into our repair and replacement account. So given that as a background, I'll apply that rationale to the next page, which is the actual dollars for the year. And just going from top to bottom and orienting ourselves to the middle column, that's where our actual numbers are relative to kind of where we planned. And what you can see kind of jumping off the page at the beginning is that our revenues were lower than planned by a significant amount. Much of that was driven by the fact, if you look at the second line, our fuel costs were notably lower than we anticipated. So while it looks like the top line revenue is down, we also recovered nearly $300 million less than we had thought from fuel. And overall, that's not a bad thing. What you do see is that our operational and maintenance expenses were about $75 million over plan. A lot of that was driven from the stories that you've heard us talk about over the past year. It was a heavy storm year, so restoration for storms was significant. And as Elena talked about, we had some of our older power plants out of commission, more than planned. Those units are expensive. Bringing them back on, it costs some dollars. So that leaves you with, at that point, your revenues net of all these operating expenses at $1.3 billion. Again, which is about 130 plus million below where we had anticipated it being. But we'll keep flowing down the list here and talk about how we ended, which was okay. Our debt service was $560 million, right? So our principal and interest was about $17.5 million more than we had it originally planned, mostly driven by the fact that we acquired those East Texas plants using all debt. So that's the incremental principal and interest associated with that purchase. And that's okay. It was stuff we were going to pay for anyways. We just pulled it forward to this year. I think that's the point I'll make on a lot of those. The 6% that goes to repair and replacement account came in at $247 million. Again, this is about $20 million less than was anticipated. But again, we're collecting less on fuel, thus the revenues are lower, thus as a percentage, that number's lower. City payment came in at about plan, just under $500 million, which takes you to the end of our flow, which is the remaining amount left to go to our repair and replacement account of about $50 million. The number to really look at after you go through that entire story is that line item that says total repair and replacement fund additions. You can note that we had about $300 million in total that are basically going to our cash balance. It's about $150 million less than we'd originally planned. Now, while I'll show you on the next page that from a metrics perspective, we're fine and within the ranges, what that means is we're going to start the year that we're currently in with about $150 million less of cash than we'd anticipated. That's not wrong. It's just the fact that we accelerated our acquisitions of the assets. So a lot of those financial forecasts we had in the future have gotten pulled forward. And I think that's the carryover from that story. There's a couple of lines at the very bottom that just show our capital numbers. The main driver is we spent more on capital because we bought the assets, the East Texas peaker assets, and on transmission. The spend on transmission continues to be increasing as we've talked about in the past. So we ended the year with $337 million. Okay, so what does all that mean? I'm going to take you to the last slide I have, which is our results and our financial metrics. There are two sets of numbers. On the left-hand side, I've showed the results relative to our fiscal 26 budget, excluding the East Texas plants that we acquired. And then on the right-hand side, I have the results relative to the generation plan long-term expectations. And that's very important because this is the second year where we've pulled forward an asset purchase in our generation plans sooner than we had planned. And both views have been communicated to the rating agencies. And I think that's probably the most important thing is that they are aware and they understand the long-term financial ranges of metrics that we have communicated all the way through the early 2030s. And so if you look at the left, the main thing that is different, excuse me, the main thing that is different is on the debt to capitalization ratio, you have a different range. On the left-hand side was the range that we anticipated ending this year that we're closing out without pulling forward the purchase. What you see on the right-hand side was the long-term view of the range of debt to capitalization percentages that were in our future years closer to 2030. And with that, the acquisition, we're still within those ranges. So all said, a good year. A lot of things came in that we weren't anticipating, but arguably they're very good for our community and very supportive of the long-term strategy we had. And so with that, Chair Dr. Romero, I think that's my last slide. It is. I will turn it over to you and the board with any questions for Elena and I.
All right, thank you. And I will note that Trustee Gonzalez has left, at least temporarily, the board meeting. Questions, starting with Trustee Dr. Gonzalez? Okay, Dr. Mackey? I did have, oh, go ahead.
I was just
Yeah.
going to say, reason that we don't have a lot of questions, we had an opportunity to sit down with the auditors and go over all our questions and implementation, so I'm fine with what we see. So
Thank you. I'm happy with this too. I think it's really good. One thing that occurred to me just for the future, I feel like I don't have a good understanding of the living mission and values piece of this. And I wondered if in the future when we get updates on this, we could get more of a sense of how this is collected, if it's surveys, if it's focus groups, and the kinds of things that are being asked of employees. I think would be helpful to bring us a little closer to that.
You know what we'll do, Dr. Romero? 'Cause I think it's a great point. We will bring a specific presentation on employee engagement and how we think about employee engagement at CPS Energy at the committee level. And if board members have any feedback, then we can even do a full board level presentation if need be.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. All right, we thank you for this. We are on item 10, which is our annual audited financial statements, and KPMG will be making our presentation. Hello.
Hey there, thank you for having us today. We are here to present our annual audited financial statement results. I just want to say this is year 5 of us providing these results and being able to work with CPS Energy. And we love that because we're here locally. We work with Carmona and Schreiber here locally. And so we're happy to work with you. And before we get into the results, I was going to have Chris Carmona just say a couple words.
Thank you, Andy. Hi, thank you so much for having us here today. Met with the Audit and Finance Committee meeting team last week. And I just want to continue to reiterate year after year the opportunity that we have as a small local firm in San Antonio that you provide us to be able to work with firms like KPMG. I'm former KPMG. One of our team members is actually former KPMG as well. We really appreciate those opportunities, so thank you. And thank you for KPMG for the opportunity as well.
Also, I have my senior manager, Genesee Tyler, here, just in the front row. So just wanted to point her out. So.
She makes it happen.
Yeah, she makes it happen. So I know we talked at length last week, but I will go through our results. These slides were put together, a few weeks ago. So what I'll say is the only outstanding matters we have right now is just a final review of the financial statements, which we're very far along on. And then also receipt of the management rep letter, which we'll receive after this meeting, I've been assured. So other than that, no outstanding matters. The audit report, as Corey said earlier, will be an unqualified audit report, which I'll show you here in a little bit, which means it's a clean audit report. And I can report there's no corrected or uncorrected misstatements that I have to point out to the board today. As we continue on, this shows everything that we could report to you if there was a matter. Notice most of them have X's on it. Anything that we will talk about is further in the presentation. But this is a good thing that there's mostly X's in the slide. Further on, consultations, there were no difficult or contentious consultations that we had to have with either our national office or with third parties this year. Also, there were no illegal acts or fraud that were identified that we need to report to the board. On the next 5 slides, and I'm sorry it takes up so much space, but is our unqualified audit opinion that will be included with the financial statements. I'm not going to go through it word by word unless someone wants to talk about it, but like I said, it's unqualified and it's a clean opinion. On the next 4 slides, and this is another one, there's 4 significant accounting estimates that we have tested through our audit. They are the same 4 accounting estimates that we've looked at the last 5 years. I'll note that there's no significant findings from those accounting estimates. I'm happy to discuss in detail any of those estimates, but otherwise, I was going to just move on from these. Audit participants, like I said, we do the audit from here in San Antonio. The only other piece of the audit that we rely on is the South Texas Nuclear Project, which is also audited by KPMG out of Houston, and we rely on their reporting. And based on their reporting, there was no issues or significant findings to report to the board. Subsequent events. We look at subsequent events to see if anything happened after the balance sheet date that should be disclosed. There was a couple things that were identified that we have determined are properly disclosed within the financial statements, and we have no issue with those disclosures. Independence, I just want to point out that as of today, we consider ourselves independent of CPS Energy. There's a couple services that are provided. One is our accounting research tool to the company. The other is our custom learning portal, which provides CPE training to anyone that needs CPE credits within the company. And both of those are provided free of charge. But again, I affirm that we remain independent of the company as of today. Audit professional fees. We had a 5-year agreement, which this shows that 5-year agreement. The only additional fees for the current year were 3 bond issuances, which were $25,000 each, which was also in that agreement. So no other modifications to those fees. In required inquiries, I'll say that we went through a lot of these during the ANF meeting, so I don't think I need to ask the group here for anything else. But with that, I'd love to answer any questions you have or talk about anything. Yeah.
Thank you, Andy. Dr. Mackey, any questions? Trustee Dr. Gonzalez? All right, and I will just reiterate, we did all get this in committee. We are not seeing it for the first time here. So thank you, Andy, Chris, Genesee. Appreciate it. Okay. All right, our last regular agenda item is 11, Energizing Progress Together, our Generation Plan Refresh with Mr. David Key.
Good afternoon. Thank you, trustees, for the opportunity to continue the discussion focused on our generation planning process. Don't have any formal action today on the agenda, but do appreciate your feedback and guidance on this topic. So there's 2 main reasons for starting this work. One is to stay aligned with the previous generation planning board resolution from 2023. And 2 is to continually track as we continually track all of our input data. We've observed enough of a change that it makes sense to elevate the conversation. As a recap, we started a generation planning refresh discussions back in January. And in March, we focused on our expectations for growth, identified the impact to our approved plan, namely the gap. I showed that last month. Today, we're going to talk about how to close the gap. I want to start here with the reminder of the process used for the technical portion of the analysis, of the evaluation. And this should look pretty familiar. It's essentially the same analytical process we used to develop the approved plan from 3 years ago. Charles River Associates continues to lead our team and the technical experts on this project. We've been closely coordinating with our teams to update the assumptions and rerun the analysis. We also have a representative from Charles River in the audience today to help answer any questions the board may have. When I talk about updating the assumptions, this is really a good view of what we're looking at. This shows what was evaluated, and you'll notice that the top three on this list are very familiar. We've been talking about these quite a bit. We are seeing a high level of growth here locally and across the state. Also, the cost of building new energy resources and power sources is increasing, and those are all taken into consideration in the analysis. So let's probe a little bit further. This is looking at our observations with our current board-approved generation plan from 3 years ago. When we evaluated these needs, we created the plan based on the best available information, and it did accommodate customer growth and replaced aging power sources. You can see we added a line to this graphic to show the demand forecast. What is the customer need going forward all the way through 2050? Now, part of this plan was a recognition that we'll need to invest in our system. The orange additions we see there do require periodic rate increases to cover the cost of the investments. And this is all, like I said, part of our approved generation plan back from 2023 that was approved by the board in January of that year. Now, adding to this and building on the approved plan, the data we see here is the same I showed last month, but we've added a little bit to it. We've added the demand forecast line there on the top as noted as CY 2025 demand forecast. I wanted to show this for two reasons. First is to show how the forecasts have changed over time. In 3 years, we've seen a significant change. And the second reason is to show how the updated forecast line to provide some context of the timing. So we've talked about how we're going to fill the gap, and that's very important, but also important is the timing or when we're going to fill the gap. Based on the best information available we see today, the current plan begins to fall short in the early part of 2030. As with any forecast, the near term always has a higher level of certainty, and we regularly monitor and improve our forecast as time goes on. Before we get to strategy, I wanted to show a summary of the key drivers that we're seeing in the market. The bottom line really is our current plan is just going to cost more to execute. The biggest driver to the cost is seen here as the new build cost, building new power sources. It's really driven by the economic drivers in the market. The market is highly constrained. There's a lot of demand, and it's demand for new generation, and it's outpacing the ability for manufacturers to keep up with creating the components. As you can imagine, component manufacturers are ramping up production, but don't expect to see any significant improvement in delivery anytime soon in the near term. The other key takeaway from the slide is our customer demand, and we've talked about that quite a bit. But basically, under the current plan, there will not be enough capacity to close the gap that we've talked about. Without investing in additional power sources, we'll be exposed to the wholesale market. This is an exposure that creates pricing risk, which will have a direct impact on customer bills. This is important to note because we have repeatedly heard out in the community that predictability in bills is important. As you can imagine, the market is not very predictable, so this adds a level of uncertainty to our efforts to fill the gap. Okay, so here's where we're talking about strategy, and there is a lot of information here, so I'm going to try to take some time to walk through the data. A little bit of orientation, that top row of information where it says current plan in today's price environment. It basically shows how the current plan that we approved about 3 years ago performs looking at today's assumptions. And across all this information, lower numbers are better for customer outcomes. We have 3 columns there. Customer bill impact is what we measure with affordability. The pricing risk is the forced market exposure. That's a measure of reliability and resiliency. And then the emissions intensity and progress towards the cap is how we measure environmental sustainability. Focusing back on that first row, just notice that there's a lot of relative dollar signs in the blue column there. This is how we represent a high level of market exposure. It's difficult to predict and convey market pricing, so we're providing this as a relative view to compare against each other. So we've talked through the top row. The second row really looks at the expected outcomes of only closing the gap the expected outcomes of closing the gap using our existing plan and just updating it to meet the current expected demand. The next row is labeled primarily natural gas. That's if we were to close the gap using only dispatchable power resources like natural gas. And the third row is who we can expect from adding only renewable and zero carbon emitting sources to close the gap. It's important to note that in all cases, the numbers in the yellow column, the average bill, are going to go up. I mean, we talked about that area. There's a lot of external drivers that are just going to make costs go up. And just as a reference, today's bill is around $190, so we can see that that's relatively higher than, the results here are relatively higher than our average bills. And like I said, this is because things are more expensive. We also wanted to guard against bill shocks, and that's represented in that blue column. So the bill shocks is what we're thinking about when we talk about guarding against volatile bills. And why I believe continuing our investment in diversified power sources makes sense. Before I get to the next slide, I did want to call out, we've kind of put in the top right corner there the triangle that shows how we're trying to balance affordability, reliability, and cleaner energy sources. So if you look at just one column by itself, it may not work out to balance across all three. So this is something that we think about as we talk about how we evaluate these. And that's one of the reasons why we're recommending the updated blended plan, is because it balances those three. So this brings us to our recommendation to sustain the blended strategy. We noted that as the updated blended plan in the previous slide. But basically, if we stay on this path, we can continue to invest in a diversified blended portfolio, stay on track to exit coal, add wind, solar, storage, additional natural gas, and nuclear. We're also looking at how our existing generators can serve as potential bridges to close the gap until we build new energy sources. So this is things like just additional natural gas. We're still going to remain on track to exit coal. We believe this strategy provides the most predictable outcomes or remain in control of our costs as opposed to relying on the wholesale market to meet our needs. Proposed path forward. Well, before I get to the path forward, I do want to provide a more personal story to help understand how I relate to this topic. So I'm the oldest of four siblings, and my mom, when we were growing up, she knew we were going to hit a growth spurt. So when she had to think about buying clothes for all of us, that took some planning, but she basically developed a strategy, accommodate our preteen growth within our budget. When it was time to go shopping, she got us all what we needed, got bigger sizes than what we needed, and she made us wear a belt and cuff up our pant legs because she knew we'd grow into our clothes over time. We also got hand-me-downs from our older cousins, which sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't. But this isn't a new idea. This is the same example. This is the same concept we're using for accommodating our family growth. We use that in our generation planning growth. We look for recognizing what's coming, making a plan, and looking for the best deals and the best way to take care of everybody. So again, I'm not asking for a vote today. We will be coming back at the next meeting, asking your support of our strategic plan. Our focus remains on strategy. Any deals or projects that allow us to implement the strategy will follow up with our board approval process. We'll be asking for approval of our overall direction, basically approve our playbook that we will use to find the right projects and bring back when the timing is right. I'm also looking to meet with the CIC in the coming weeks, we will be sharing their feedback and input with you all. And we also have a community engagement report that's coming out very, very soon. So with that, thank you again for the time. I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
All right. Trustee Dr. Gonzalez?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. Mr. Key, thank you so much for your presentation. You know I always enjoy them, so I've got some fun questions I hope for you.
Great.
Can we go back to slide 8 so we can review that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I think I need to earn a new PhD to translate this slide, but
Right.
I'm going to tell you what I understood from it to make sure that it matches what you were trying to relay. And I want to do this mainly also for the people who might be listening in, this is a lot. This is a lot to digest all in one slide. It's got a lot of great information. My understanding is that the first line where it says current plan in today's price environment, that's the plan that we have in place right now. And if we stuck to that plan, the risk would be, one, we wouldn't meet our energy needs. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And when you look at the average price for the customer, $239, we're saying that, but we're also saying that there's a big risk there with the fluctuation of that price, and that's why you have a lot of dollar signs, right?
Absolutely right.
So if somebody's looking at this and they're looking at those multiple dollar signs, that means that price that we're saying will be able to be the average cost for our customer is very likely to change.
It has a higher likelihood that it could change, and it's very likely to be higher just because of the market forces that we're going to be working within, yes.
Okay. And so then you say, okay, I'm bringing 3 different plans to the board so that you guys can see what our options are so that we can meet that energy demand that you said would start happening in about 2030. Is that correct? That's when we're going to start to see some of that gap?
Yes, ma'am. We'll actually see that in the early 2030s, and we'll have to work through with the team to figure out how far ahead of that we need to start actually building things and procuring them. But that's the right time frame, yes.
Okay. So that our customers know we have about 3 years to try to get ahead of that. So when we get around to that time, we have enough energy for the community and the needs that it needs at that time due to our growing population, correct?
That's absolutely right.
Okay. So when you look at the 3 different plans, you have the updated blend, you have the one that's primary natural gas, and then the zero emitting power. Based on previous discussions, the zero emitting power is a little unrealistic for us to think we can do. Is that correct? Like that would be the hardest one to do and probably the most not feasible? I just want to make sure I have that correct in my mind.
It costs quite a bit to buy the capacity because the equivalent capacity with the renewables compared to a natural gas or other dispatchable source, it's just going to be higher because you have to buy more of it. There's also some volatility associated with that. We show that in the blue column with the $3 signs. There is some risk there that when the prices are higher, it's because renewables aren't performing in the market. So it is a little bit more challenging on the front end, on the back end, also from the operations of it also.
The reason I want to zero in on that a little bit is because when you look at the environmental goals for 2030 and 2040, that in theory is the only one that would allow us to get to that point. But again, the reason that we're not prioritizing that one is because of the other things. It's harder to do. There's more challenges. The price is going to be higher for our customers. And then there's also that higher risk of fluctuation in price.
That's right. I will note, and that's a really good call out on how the cap goals are not being met. I will note that, and it failed to make this slide, so apologies, but I just wanted to note the limits that the cap goals are at. So for 2030, the limit is 543, so anything below 543 is considered meeting the goals. And for 2040, it's 267, so anything below that, at or below that, will meet the goals. So while 199 for zero emitting is well below that, the 267 is pretty close to the 334. I mean, there is some room for improvement there, but that's very close and pretty far out. So we think there's going to be some room for improvement as technology improves and as we move forward. So,
okay. So then that leaves the other 2 plans, right? The updated and then primary natural gas. Again, right. Both of them have affordability of $226 for the natural gas, $248 for the other one. However, the risk of the price is much more volatile in the primary natural gas. So we've got more stability in that updated blended plan.
That's right.
Correct? Okay. And so then when you look at it, that's the one you guys are recommending. It's got a fairly good rate for our customers, or at least in line with the other ones except for the 226, but it's the most predictable as far as price is concerned. And then like you point out, our 468 for our goal of 2030 is close to the 543, right?
It's below it, yes. We've already met that target for 2030.
Okay. And then again, just to reiterate that out of all the plans, only one of them would actually meet the goal for 2040, but really that's probably one of the most challenging, unpredictable for our customers as far as price is concerned, and probably the hardest to actually roll out.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, those are all the questions I had. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I have a few
For a
comments.
freshman board member, that is a pretty good line of questioning. Dr. Gonzalez, good job.
Um, I want to talk about for a minute the CAP goals and how we're using that as a metric, which is appropriate because this board signed on to it like 4 years ago. I think it was right before I started or my first meeting. So I guess it wouldn't be fair to say that CAP doesn't plan for growth, which it doesn't, but it doesn't matter because their metrics are in emission intensity proportionately, right? So it's CO2 per megawatt hour.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
So it doesn't matter. So we always talk about this, Dee Dee talks about that, and educated me on it. There could be a lot more CO2. It's just that their metric is the intensity. So it's just something to think about. It kind of leaves me a little unsettled. But it is what it is. I just want to make sure that people are aware of that with the CAP goals.
One of the things I think that we did do, and Rudy, correct me if I'm wrong, is that although we approved the CAP goals here, which is not total emissions, we added an additional environmental metric to track in our enterprise metrics that covers what you are talking about. So even though we committed to CAP goals for our gen plan, we wanted to track that same information so it's available for the public and accounts for growth.
Well, and I do think that there are also conversations happening over at the city where the CAP goals will be, continue to be a topic of discussion. And do we have it right? Is there anything, are there any other measures? And we'll be part of that conversation as well. So I can't imagine that the current CAP policy approved by the city will stay exactly like it is. At least I'm hopeful it's not, because there are updates I think that relevantly need to be made. So, we'll track that process as well and bring that information back to our board as it's necessary.
Okay, thank you. Another sort of big question, I think we've discussed this before, but part of this whole thing is how the increased demand, the increased number of customers is going to increase prices. And so I know that kind of fuels the argument where people say, well, then you should just say no to data centers, which I know is illegal to say no to anybody. Thank you. But yeah, it's okay. But can you sort of fill in the rest of the story? Because it's not just about how new customers are increasing prices, but that kind of comes around, kind of like the hand-me-down story a little bit, right? So what then are the ultimate benefits for having new customers to the existing customers?
Trying to think of the easy way to say that. Basically, customers pay for the use of the system, and so as you grow your customer count, they're going to pay for their fair share. I mean, that's really the whole foundational of our rate structure. When we talk about everything's going to be more expensive, I did cover in this slide new build cost, and that's important. I'll tie it back to this slide. When we show in the blue our existing legacy assets and they're starting to taper off, that's because of retirements. We've had to replace those. And we can see that we've done that with some of our acquisitions, but we still have more to do to keep up. So the new build cost is really driving the need for new generation and increasing those costs. And since everybody's using the system and paying for their part of the system, it should be equitable across, relatively equitable across the rate classes.
Yeah, let me try to help you phone a friend here, David. I think, Dr. Meadow, the way I think about this, as our system is expanding, as large load customers will come online over time, the calculus of who's paying for what changes. And so is it going to offset completely, a environment where costs are rising? No. Will it moderate it some because you've got new customers picking up, helping with, defray some of the costs? Yes, it will. So they're going to rise because everything's getting more expensive to operate a system, especially a system of our size with high growth. But it won't rise as much as you might see in other markets because of the growth that we have. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes, that's what I'm looking for. I do want our customers to understand that as we have to accommodate more customers, that they are paying into the system, just like it's always been with CPS Energy. As people come in, the existing customers are kind of paying forward to them, and then those customers pay forward to the next group of them. So it's, yeah, I mean, it's not perfect, but it's also not as simple as saying we're all just paying more and more as more people come into the system.
And I just want to note that, under our regulatory framework that we have set up in Texas, each customer class is charged for the costs of serving that customer class. And so the rising costs associated with providing service to large load customers are collected from large load customers. The costs associated with providing service to residential customers are collected from residential customers. That may not be the case everywhere, but sometimes I hear statements that don't reflect that. The cost of service to one class isn't collected from another class.
Okay, and we will be getting to that later in the summer with our new cost of service study. The other thing I wanted to ask you, just to play devil's advocate on this, the extent to which, if we take your recommendations and we move forward with this, and you come forward with a new project, and we don't like it. Now, I know the danger would be higher, right, if we were in the all renewables or the all gas going forward, and you came forward with something and we said no, then you could really say, you just really put our gen plan that you supported in jeopardy here. But to the extent that we would go, if we do go with the blended plan, how do you envision that you would come to us with a project, and if we say no, you would say, well, that ruins the whole thing?
Well, let me just interject here. We're going to get there together, Chair Romero. I mean, it's the only way I can say it. We're always looking for opportunities to move our gen plan forward at the lowest cost. As we're talking to the board about those, what that means for, rate implications. Again, we present these plans as a roadmap to not necessarily obligate you to whatever rate case might be coming down the road to support it. It's to show you that it's going to take investment. So, so having a guide helps helps us prioritize and give clarity to the organization on what we're trying to accomplish. But we will take your feedback on the way we're trying to implement it as we go, so that there's alignment. So you should never expect us to come, if you don't like us building or buying a certain, asset, to say, okay, well, it's on you, because now we're not going to be able to accomplish our goals. We'll just go back to the drawing board and figure out what next asset there is that we can invest. So, I want to reassure everybody in the community that, and the community is the other part of it. Talking to our community about how we're going to get there is equally important to assure that you all have a sense of what the community's expectations are, so we can get there together. That's going to continue to be our approach.
And I didn't mean to say we would be blaming you or you would be blaming us. I think you would agree that that the blended plan gives us the greatest chance of having flexibility in the projects that we do approve, because it's not make or break for gas or renewables that we can have. Okay, so can we call Pat Augustine up? Because he flew all the way here from Chicago? Or are you in Boston? DC, okay. Thank you for being here. We were disappointed you were virtual last week, so.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay. So can you just tell us your role, the role of your agency in our original gen plan?
Sure. I'm here from CRA, Charles River Associates, and CPS Energy hired us 3.5 years ago to both lead the analysis in concert with the whole team here, and to help facilitate some of the stakeholder engagement we had with the Rate Advisory Committee. So we actually use and run some of the same
power market models in this space that the CPS Energy team has. So we were really a partner there to kind of help lead the assumptions development, help develop the portfolios with the guidance that was provided by the company and the stakeholders, and then perform most of the analysis. You know, a lot of our analysis in the power markets goes into financial analysis that the internal team here does. So I would say it was a partnership in the analysis, but we played a significant role in developing assumptions and running those models and helping synthesize the results.
Okay, thank you. And because I went to all the RAC meetings and learned along with them, I know it was a really, really complex process, and there were so many layers to building this gen plan. So I think the question I would ask you is, because I feel comfortable saying that at this point, we are updating the gen plan as opposed to tearing apart the old one and starting from scratch. And so given your perspective and your role on this, would you say that is a wise way to move forward, is simply to be adapting the plan that we already have as opposed to starting from scratch again with us?
Yes, broadly. I mean, I think what's been done here is maybe somewhere in between. I wouldn't characterize it solely as a simple refresh as much as, stepping back and taking the same type of themes that we looked at 3 years ago and doing a fair bit of analysis. The table that David just shared is distilling, several months of work. There was the same rigorous type of production cost and ERCOT market analysis that went into it, and actually some expanded risk analysis. So those dollar signs that were shown on the risk and resiliency category incorporated what we call a probabilistic analysis this round, which was a little bit different than what we did 3 years ago, where we took 1 or 2 extreme weather events, if you remember. This time we actually ran 100 different simulations looking at uncertainty in weather and wind and solar and forced outages and CPS energy load. So I say all that just to hopefully maybe make the point that, this wasn't just refreshing the existing plan with a few scalars based on the load forecast. It was, let's step back and maybe not do the whole exercise again, but take a look at the types of pathways that CPS Energy has under new assumptions, some new techniques, and then, present the results in the fashion that you just saw them.
Thank you. That was very helpful. I appreciate that. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have one more question for Mr. Key. Can we go back to that slide again, please? Is there a way for the next time this is presented for our community? So when we think about the top 3 priorities that we hear from them that are the most important, reliability is number 1, followed by affordability. So when you look at these different plans, is there a way to gauge the reliability of the energy sources so that they can get an idea too? Because I have a feeling that that plan that you guys are recommending would once again probably be the one that would guarantee the reliability in our power, but I don't know if that's correct. Is there a way to do it maybe do the same scale like the dollar signs, but maybe do like, I don't know, light bulbs or something? So
We definitely will do that. I will say that the dollar signs are meant to be an equivalent of reliability.
Okay.
Because, just the way the market dynamics work, if you're not reliable, it costs more. So that's a proxy, but we can come back with a better visual to help.
If it's the same thing, then that's fine. I just wanted something for our customers to kind of understand that as well.
Great, yes. We'll take that back.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it is a little confusing because there's an affordability column, but then the dollar signs are not in the affordability column. So, yeah. And then also if you could have the cap goal metrics in there, that would be helpful.
I apologize I didn't make it this time. We'll get it the next time.
No, that's fine. We think you're doing lots and lots of work on this, so thank you. All right. Thank you all for that. It is time for us to go into executive session. Ms. Ramirez.
Yes, ma'am. It is, at this time, the board is going to recess into an executive session to discuss matters that have been duly posted under several provisions of Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, including consultation concerning attorney-client matters under Section 551.071, personnel matters under Section 551.074, security matters regarding critical infrastructure under Section 551.0761, security personnel or devices under Section 551.076, to deliberate regarding security audits and devices under Section 551.089, and to deliberate under the Texas Government Code under Section 418.183, subsection F, about confidential information under the Texas Homeland Security Act. At the conclusion of the executive session, the board will reconvene in open session and continue the meeting. It's 2:24 p.m. going into executive session.
Ms. Ramirez, can you bring us back from executive session, please?
Yes, ma'am. It is 3:20 PM and the board has concluded executive session. I can confirm that there were no votes taken and no matters were discussed that were not part of the posted agenda. We have a quorum and we have yourself, Vice Chair Dr. Mackey, and Trustee Dr. Gonzalez present.
All right, can you review any action items from this board meeting?
Yes, ma'am. Excluding the action item that was obtained during executive session, I have one from open session, and that is from Chair Romero. We will push through the committee's a presentation that contains the details on employee engagement metrics, definitions, and processes.
And we have to update our generation plan slide at Dr. Gonzalez's request. Yeah.
I would also ask, I didn't really bring this up, but if in the Gen Plan presentation next time, we could address the demand response piece. I know we addressed that separately too, but it was
Absolutely.
It was part
And
of
you mean
public comment.
the contribution from demand response that contributes to the overall capacity needs?
Yes.
Okay.
Think about conservation as another power source.
Gotcha. Understood. Yes, ma'am. So I have 3 action items in total.
Okay, anything else? All right, motion to adjourn, please. I will second. Okay, second. All in favor? We are adjourned at 3:21 PM.